Okay, John March here, Montgomery County Tea Party. It is December the 5th, and we're at 11 a.m. And with me are Bob Bankley, Kenneth Ernest, Luis Pedraza, Lana Howard, Kendra Yamaguchi, and Larry Rogers. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to
Thank,
be here with you guys.
oh, super. Thank you. Thanks for answering our questionnaire
Yes, sir.
and for coming in for the interview. Really appreciate that. If you want, as we discussed, take up 5 minutes for your opening, and then we'll kind of get into the Q&A after that.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. And I know you guys have read over and looked at material, but grew up down in Hayes County, south of Austin, and went to Southwest Texas State University. And in order to pay for college, I decided to go into the Navy Reserve. So I left the day after I got out of high school, went and did that, and came back. And after I graduated, wound up moving up to Dallas, where I met my lovely wife, Patty. And my brother and I had started a pen and pencil company, and so kind of serial entrepreneurs, had a little ad agency. But after Patty and I got married, she said, "Hey, we need a hobby together." And I think she was thinking gardening, antique, scuba diving, but I bought a beehive. And so I had started with this one beehive, and never really had any intentions of anything. Just fell in love with it. It was really fascinating. And then I also went on a mission trip about 6 months after that down to Venezuela that completely changed my life. And those two decisions, which I never did either with any intentionality, um, became the most impactful things in my life. So I wound up spending 12 years vocationally working for E3 Partners, a church planting ministry, traveling to 88 countries around the world, telling people about Jesus, and had the opportunity to use my skill sets in ministry. We developed this little tool called an Evangel Cube. It's got 7 pictures to tell the story of death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And then we created this other evangelism platform called I Am Second, which was an online platform using people's stories. And so everybody's trying to be first, but you can't really be first until you realize that God's first. And so I'm second. So I always had the honey company on the side. I left there in 2010, and we had 4 kids. We homeschooled, and I figured I'd been gone for about literally 3.5 years of the 12 years that I worked at E3 overseas. And so started doing the honey company full time, and it was tiny at the time. But when I left ministry, I had the same heart passion that I wanted to make an impact for God's kingdom that I did in ministry going into business. And so I just thought we're going to do it differently. So I wanted to be the most trusted honey company in the world because there were so many honey businesses that were um, that people just didn't trust honey. And so I felt like if I was going to build trust, and I had to be transparent, and transparency would help if I tested everything. So I tested all the honey twice, um, and that was very impactful. And then I also created another sector of honey called raw and unfiltered, which today the honey category at the time was $300 million in flat for decades. Today it's $1.5 billion, and the $1.2 billion of growth has come from the raw and unfiltered sector of honey. And so um, I was CEO of Nature Nates until November of last year, and then I was with my buddy Rick Santorum, and I was telling him that I was just in this next phase of life, trying to figure out what God had next. Spent 12 years in full-time ministry, 12 years in full-time business, and Rick says you should run for ag commissioner. And I was like, run for ag commissioner? He said people are getting sick, we're losing agriculture. So came back, talked to my wife about it. I've been one of Sid Miller's largest donors over the years. So I called him up, took him lunch, and said, "Hey, what is your plan? You're going to run again?" And he said, "Well, I'm thinking about running for the Senate for John Cornyn's seat." And I said, "That's a great idea. You should do it." And then I told him what I was thinking about, praying about. And he said, "You should run." I asked him if that was an endorsement. He said, "No." If Sid were here, he would say, "Well, I admit if I didn't run." But that was in March. And so I declared in May after talking to a lot of people and praying. And then he declared a couple um, months later. So I didn't start off in this rant or this. I didn't start off in this process of being an anti-sig guy. It really to just take the skill sets of what I was able to do in agriculture and help farmers be successful. Because we lost 7% of all farms in America last year, 122,000 farms. Why? Because they can't afford to be in business anymore. All the expenses keep going up, and agriculture producers really don't have a vision for how to do the other part of business, and that's increase your revenue. And so the whole strategy of giving them more access to more consumers, it's easy but not simple. It's, let's go sell more product to more people for more money. And we'll do that through direct to consumer. We got to rethink agriculture. I was meeting with the Plains cotton growers and told them about the whole thing about raw and unfiltered because they looked at it like they couldn't figure out what to do. And yet I said it's very applicable and we can change the current trajectory of cotton. And so they were all in agreement. So it's been an incredible process. We've got a lot of momentum. We've got tons of endorsements, and we've done not as well as I want on the fundraising side, but it's really going well. I mean, we've raised over 2.5 times more than Sid's ever raised already. So we're very excited.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, he's I guess his name has been a mainstay for a while. That's a tough mountain to climb, I guess,
Well, it's
to take
interesting.
them out.
We
But
did we did polling early on,
yeah,
and um, most state wide candidates had, or not candidates, politicians had a 60 to 70% unaided name ID. Sid had a 30%.
Hmm.
And so we added a couple of negatives about Sid, some positives about me, Christian business guy, fifth generation Texan veteran. And in that process, we beat him with Republican primary voters in the poll, 68-12.
what is an unaided name ID?
So they just say, "Who's Greg Abbott? Do you
Mhm.
know who Greg Abbott is?" Yeah. Oh, he's the governor. Okay. Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, Don Buckingham, Sid Miller, and
30%.
30%.
Wow.
Just because his name's not the gas tanks anymore.
Yeah, but it's on all the other stuff that he's put it on, which I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Bob?
So that was going to be one of my things here. The, the mismanagement um, of things like regulating fuel pumps um, were stripped from the agency. Can you elaborate on that? Can they go back to that, or who's taking care of that now that it's not under agriculture?
It's probably in the place it probably should have been originally. It's Texas Weights and Measures, and so the reason why it was with TDA to begin with is part of consumer protection, and so they've got scales because I guess it's associated with like in the agriculture business you weigh trucks and so that's a part of agriculture, and I guess that's why it got looped in there originally, but it was taken away because of the abuse that he had by using it as a way to promote himself. And so Sid has not ever really been able to raise money. And so he has utilized the assets of the Texas Department of Agriculture to be his campaign fund. And even yesterday, we were in a debate starting in Bryan College Station. And then we had another one last night in Decatur. And when he showed up yesterday, he was in his official Texas Department of Agriculture Suburban with the exhibit plates out campaigning with his personal assistant, which is illegal. So we took a picture of it, we posted it online and showed everybody, hey, this is what he's doing. And yesterday afternoon, I filed a public for information request from TDA for a lot of things that that we know of what he's been doing improprieties. So he went up and he sponsored a festival in Waxahachie a few this summer. That festival has been around since 1948. It's been the biggest festival in Texas past 25 years. All of a sudden, this summer, became the Go Texan. They had 11 sound stages, and on each sound stage, on both sides, there were 30-foot banners, 5 feet wide, of Sid Miller's picture. He created an award that he gave to himself and interviewed or introduced every single band. Just happened to be this summer. So he just continues to use state assets and resources to promote himself campaigning.
Okay. So I appreciate you spent a lot of time in your response on Doge, And we've had some discussions with Don Huffines already, and that went really well, in my opinion. Um, Tell me the mechanics of in the ag department, um, your process, and then how you're going to actually cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and make it happen. Implement it is kind of where I'm going with that. What would that look like?
Well, the quickest way we can get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse is to get rid of Sid Miller and his leadership team. And his chief of staff pled guilty to a felony commercial bribery, bribing people in agriculture to give him $25,000 so they could be guaranteed to get a hemp license that you could buy for $100 from the TDA. But he told people there would only be 15. And so if you wanted to make sure you got one of them, give him 25,000. So after he had $150,000 wired to his account, he was arrested and charged with felony commercial bribery, prosecuted last November, and they subpoenaed Sid to come in and testify against him. And then, so Sid wouldn't have to testify. He pled guilty to a felony and was not allowed to be a lobbyist any longer. So he needed a job, so Sid hired him as the chief of staff of the TDA, getting paid $250,000 a year, where he is today. And he brought in all of his vendors to be used, fired the head of marketing for the Go Texan program. She'd been there for 20 years. And why? Because he wanted to be able to control that budget, because that's really where all the money is. So we're going to go in, we're going to have 4 P's. We're going to focus on people, process, product, and profit. So the people, we're going to go in and assess every single person that's there. We're going to get rid of the cancer. We're going to create a culture and environment of unity and trust and having a customer centric focus process. We're going to go in, we're going to review all of the fees and regulations. He raised fees by $26 million on agriculture industry. We're going to go look at every regulation and say, what was the goal? Does it help people be in business, or is it a safety thing? And if it's not one of those, get rid of it and figure out how we actually lower the fees based on pro forma. Profit, we're going to go help more farmers sell more product to more people for more money. And then the product, we're going to go in and we're going to be in the top 10 for school lunch nutrition within 3 years. We're 44th in the nation right now in nutritional value and school lunch programs, and we wonder why we're 41st in the country in education.
So one of the questions was disaster relief from droughts, but my question is more around water rights, and it's simply not on here. But I was wanting to know, what would you do to help Texas with water supply? In essence, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think in agriculture is a massive user, like 60-70% of water in Texas. And it's becoming a much more scarce commodity. Yet we have every region is different and is complaining or being challenged by different things. Up in the Northeast, you have people who is their 400,000 acres of land is being eminent domain for the Marvin Nichols Reservoir, and those people are fighting that. Then you go over into East Texas, and Kyle Bass has gone in there and bought a bunch of land, and he's wanting to pump out 12 million gallons a day and go sell them to a city. And those people are up in arms about the land rights that we get. Then you go over into West Texas, and everybody wants to have the ability to tap into surface water. So it just really depends. I was with Senator Perry in Amarillo at the Farm and Ranch show, and Senator Perry, who's the head of the Ag Committee for the Senate, who has endorsed me, I went to his water presentation, and he was just talking about the six ways that they're working to try to develop more water inside of Texas. One, we're way behind the curve, like almost a decade behind. And it's going to cost us 60-70 billion dollars. And right now we've got 20 billion through what we just all voted on. But one of the areas where people really aren't aware is the produced water, which comes out of the Permian Basin. We get 6 million barrels of oil a day. out of the Permian Basin, we get 26 million barrels of water a day out of the Permian Basin. So they, for the past 6 years, have been working on technology of cleaning up that water to the level that you can actually use it in agriculture and it's clean enough and that you can grow crops. And so their goal would be to turn West Texas into Eden. But there's PFAS issues associated with that I would want to ensure in the ag commissioner role to ensure that we are not taking a very dangerous chemical and perpetrating it into agriculture because they actually use it on the fracking heads and people don't know that.
There is a lot of water. There is and let me just, John, I'll take a little bit more time and maybe skip the next question, but there's a new technology where you can go deeper into the Earth's core, more for core water. Are you aware of that? And any thoughts around that?
Yeah, Sid talks about that on the campaign trail. He was talking about last night and said it was going to revolutionize Texas. And he calls it Genesis water. And when it was my turn to speak, I just said, what he just shared with you is complete fraud. It's just not true. The USGS, the Texas Water Board, Texas A&M, University of Texas, Texas Tech, they've all gone out and studied. And the deeper you go, the higher saline concentration that there is. And so Sid talks about, there's all this water down. There's just no one. I have not yet to be able to identify it. So if you have something on that, I'd love to see it. Because
I don't.
okay.
I was just wondering.
A little
Yeah.
bit hotter down there too.
Yeah, so it's
Water's the new oil and gas.
Yeah. Anyway.
but I will tell you that, to that point, we have some of the best people in the entire world that know how to move liquid from one place to another in large volume. And so I think it's got to be a combination of, the oil and gas industry and because we need desal. We need, anyone who's near the coast, we should have desal. And over in West Texas, where I've got a ranch in Guthrie, and I've got 12 million parts, 12 parts per million that come out of the side of a mountain in the headwaters of the Wichita River. And so I've got this incredibly crystal clear river that's saline. You'd probably put redfish in it. But, so even in West Texas, we need desal, but we're still going to have to move water around.
Thank you.
Awesome, great.
Especially with AI.
I'll get to brag to my husband tonight that I got to meet the guy that did the EvangeCube. We've been using it for years in our evangelism work in Cuba.
Really?
So that's pretty cool to
Who do
find
you
that
do
out
that
about
with?
you. We just
East
do
West?
we do it on our own. We've gone with East West once, and
Yeah.
we went with the International Commission once before, and then just started doing it on our own.
Okay.
My question is this: you talked about, so one of the things that Sid Miller said in his interview that I liked was he made the department pay for itself. Now, one of your questions is that he did that and a little bit more, so there's actually some surplus, and he's not living within his means, which he should be. We should all live within our means. But how can you run that department and still keep it zero-based budget and get rid of any inefficiencies and everything else like you've talked about? Because that was one thing he said that I liked. We have a county clerk here who did the same thing, makes the department pay for himself. But you don't do that at the expense of ethics, and you don't do that at the expense of overspending. So how will you do that without it costing the taxpayers more? I noticed you also said you think that we can eliminate the maintenance part of our property taxes. So how's that going to happen? Just give us a rundown of what your plan is.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of all the Sid Miller marketing promotion programs that account for millions of dollars, like a 14-season TV show that he is the star of, and the get rid of the TV studio that he had built. Won't replace the $500,000 brand new carpet that he just put throughout the TDA. I'm going to have to spend a lot of money rewrapping all of the assets of the Texas Department of Agriculture that he's got his face all over. So, his whole thing about the sunset, and that's all. Go research anything he said, and you will find out he's a great sales guy, but there's not any content to it, and it's just not true. And so he raised all of those fees because he needed it for his campaign and to be able to to market and promote himself. And so the Texas Department of Agriculture is not about the commissioner, it's about agriculture. And it's about all the people that we serve and all the people that eat the food in Texas that is getting people sick also. So Sid doesn't understand, one, the need in the way that we can help agriculture not just survive, but thrive. And he also doesn't understand the connection to Maha. And he talks about, he was Maha before Maha, and how incredible the school lunch program is. We're 44th in the nation.
Mm.
And he says that that Bobby Kennedy wants to hold him up as the pinnacle of states well done. The average state spends 16% of their school lunch budget buying from local produce. We are at 9%. So we're actually 7% lower than what the national average is. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in this, but I'll just say, just getting rid of the things that Sid does to promote himself will be a great savings to the budget.
I actually have two questions. My first question is, when you mentioned promoting farmers, um, what do you think of raw milk? And would you help, if you do agree with raw milk should be out there, would you do something to help get it out to the stores? I don't know anything about the process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So there are stores that do sell raw milk. HEB's got a label, but at the end of the day, there's a food safety component just to make sure, like, you want to make sure the guys in the restaurants are prepping your food properly and,
right.
Not cross contaminating. So there is that part of it. But I will say that my mom always bought raw milk, and it looked like she was going to buy cocaine, because she'd take a brown bag of cash, put it on the ground, and slide it to this guy, and then
true.
he would slide back this other bag of raw milk, and then they both walk away.
It's hilarious.
So you know what? We've been drinking raw milk ever since God created the earth, and so we're all still here.
Love it.
So we can figure it out.
Love it. My second question is, would you support or oppose any form of cattle tracking requirements like RFID mandates, digital IDs, etc.?
Yeah, so I've had dissonance about this, because on one sense, and I've met with HerdX, which is one of the RFID companies, and I really liked it from the standpoint of being able to know and track what all the inputs are that go into that animal, because it goes into your ERP system. So when you go and you buy chemicals, or you go buy feed, or whatever it is, it's batch lot, and it gets assigned to that cow. So as a consumer protection safety, I would love the ability to go and scan a QR code on steak that I'm buying and see where that animal came from and what are all the inputs. But I also don't trust the government.
Right.
And so I don't want the government knowing what I'm doing in business. It's, and if I'm not being unethical or illegal, stay out of my business. And so I probably would go to the not tracking side, because I think we could figure out the other part of it in more of a free market solution anyways.
Okay. Thanks.
Can I pipe in on that
Yeah.
one real quick? We're totally deceived when we buy meat in our markets today, because it says U.S., but it doesn't mean that it was grown here. Doesn't mean that it was processed here.
Right.
There's a bit of marketing speak that goes on in agriculture.
Yeah.
And again, I think my mission statement at Nature Nates was to honor God and help you and your family live healthy lives. My vision statement was to be the most trusted honey company in the world. The vision and mission of the Texas Department of Agriculture are going to be the same as I've had in Nature Nates. We want to honor God and help you and your family live healthy lives. And we want to be the most trusted agriculture industry in the world. And the only way we can do that is through transparency. And when I meet with the Farm Bureau, they get very nervous, because on my card it says, I want to grow food better and grow better food. And they say, what do you mean grow food better? And as soon as I say anything about testing, they get really nervous and immediately say, well, no, we trust the science. And I said, well, who's the science from? Because Monsanto's responsibility is drive shareholder value, not to really care what the outcome of the agriculture products are that go onto the store shelf. And if Monsanto has provided the science, maybe we shouldn't trust it.
That's right.
And that freaks them out. I mean, and I'm actually going to be with the Farm Bureau on Sunday. They're at the statewide convention. They asked me to come over, and I've got a meeting with all their board next week. So you get them individually and talk to them, and they'll agree with you. You get them in a group, and they start pushing back.
So does this go in with that tracking? I mean, is this part of that?
Well, and so, this part we got to figure out. I mean, to be totally candid, if Bobby Kennedy had his way, he would ban glyphosate tomorrow. But that would also be like throwing a hand grenade in the room, which Donald Trump is a great hand grenade thrower.
Right.
But but he's also trying to drive down consumer prices, and all of a sudden, if we go in and we disrupt the yield, but we're also a net importer. So I mean, there's we just got to look at it differently and look at it through the eyes of a business process versus a political process, and there is a very strong political side, obviously. It's trade negotiations. It's ensuring that China doesn't get influence, into South America and other adversaries. But right now, the greatest threat. I mean, we're so concerned about bombing boats in the Gulf, which I agree with. But we turned a blind eye to the poison that's coming from Monsanto, and that's on our table. That's in every single one of our bodies right now, and it doesn't pass through our GI tract. It goes in, kills your gut biome, goes in your brain, causes Alzheimer's. They find glyphosate in breast milk of mothers, and it's directly contributed to autism. It turns into sulfite gas, goes into the brain, and the brain tries to convert it to sulfate, and they think that's what causes autism. Goes in your endocrine system, throws off your serotonin and melatonin. People can't sleep, they're all moody, but it also throws off your hormone production. So why is it that we have all these kids that suffer with gender dysphoria? Maybe it's because they were breastfeeding from their mother and never really had any hormone production. So, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go show up in Munich, and I'm going to go to Bayer Corporation, and we're going to go talk. And just like Bobby Kennedy went into boardrooms and said, "Hey, maybe you guys can take out the dyes and the chemicals." Oh, okay, we'll sell you guys what we've been selling in Europe for the past 40 years. We as Americans just have sucker written on our forehead, and no one's standing up for us. So that's why I'm running for Ag Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, my question is, we've heard a little bit about screwworms. I grew up on a farm and ranch, and we had a lot of that until A&M came up with it.
SIT.
Yeah.
Yep.
So explain a little bit of that. Our people that'll be watching this video, I'm sure would like to know a little bit about
Screwworm. Yeah. So screwworm, think of it, the blowfly, which the blowfly lays eggs on dead things. The screwworm lays eggs on live things. And it's called a screwworm because after it lays the egg, and it lays the egg typically in an open wound or an orifice, and within 7 hours the egg pupates, and then it's a screwworm because it literally screws into the host and eats living flesh. So it was here in the 70s and just created chaos in agriculture, and because it's not just cattle, it's horses, it's dogs, it's cats, it's deer, it's people. 65 people have died in Mexico from it. And so they got rid of it by doing a sterile fly, male fly. The females only mate once in their lifetime, and they don't know if they mate with a sterile fly or a fertile fly. So they try to outpopulate the fertile males with the sterile males by releasing 500 million flies a week in an infected area. And they do it by sterilizing them. They drop boxes and they hit the ground and they all come out. So that's how we beat it in the 70s. So we have had a sterile fly facility in Darien Gap down in Panama. But during COVID, it was shut down. And then with all of the mass exodus of people from South America to North, and with the cartels utilizing cattle, it broke through. And we've known about it. Even Sid knew about it because they went and met with them back in 2023 and he didn't do anything about it. And so Eamon Blair has been, banging this for a long time. So we found it within 70 miles of the border. We've got the border closed. We're not bringing cattle in, which is creating havoc in the cattle industry right now. That's why Tyson just closed a plant in Nebraska. They went to one shift or cut a shift in Amarillo. So we don't have any SIT facilities. We're converting one over right now. We need 500 million flies a week. The USDA has budgeted $750 million to build new facilities, but they're going to take years. They say 18 months to 36 months. But there is a company, and we were having a conversation about this yesterday, and I was texted Dan Hunter, who is used to be the assistant ag commissioner until Todd Smith fired him, but now he's the executive director for the USDA's Farm Service Agency program here in Texas. And so I was talking to Dan, and there's a company called M3 that can create a portable sterile fly facility that can produce 25 million flies in a week for 10 million bucks. And I was told that they can build one in a month. So I told Dan last night, I said, Dan, the quick math, if we've got $750 million carved out for 200 million bucks, we could produce 500 million flies a week with 20 of these units. So sounds like it could be a pretty good thing. And he texted, he said something like, yeah, but they're built in Mexico. And my thought was, well, they need to go to Mexico anyways, because that's where the issues are. So that was last night. We were texting back and forth. So I'm going to see him. I was just with him in Amarillo. But, that's what we really need. We need to get this. We got to triage it. We've got a few months because of winter, but all they're doing is they're just building, because they're down south where they're continuing to perpetuate.
You might find it interesting that screwworms in Texas A&M on the first go around was way before the 70s.
It's like in the 50s was the first.
Yeah.
I think even it's always been around.
Yeah, it's always been around. But Texas A&M is when I was a kid and we had the problem. They were the ones that developed sterile.
Because there was a big outbreak, like in Florida, somewhere in the southeast. They had one, maybe even back into the 40s. It was horrible.
When we had it, it was in the late 50s.
Oh yeah, here in Texas.
Yeah, North Texas. Yeah, very interesting.
So back there in the 50s, was it the sterile fly program that they developed at that time? Okay.
Texas A&M developed. That's what we were told.
And I mean, so there, happened in the 50s. 20 years later, happening in the 70s. So we knew it would come back at some point, because it's not like we totally eradicated it.
Yeah.
And it's just the delinquency of duty of not really paying attention to that.
I'm sure the whole world is excited that they'll now know something about screwworms.
Well, I'll tell you, I talked to a woman, Susan Rubio, yesterday. She was running for Congress down in South Texas. She got a 50,000 acre ranch. And man, she is a powerhouse. The district she was running for got evaporated through the redistricting. But she said, I remember, she's 61. She said, I remember my grandmother burning all of their cattle because of the screwworm back at that point. She says, just horrible. And so we've got screwworm, which has closed the border. We've got the lowest cattle herd in 70 years. In 1970, producers made 70 cents of every $1 of food, and a packer made 30 cents. Today, packers make 70 cents and producers make 30 cents. And so, with the historically high prices and with all of the input costs going up, there's no motivating factor that would make a cow-calf guy want to keep their animals. Case in point, we decided to not keep ours. We had 360 heifers. We sent them off because we thought, well, we'll buy them back in the spring and not have that carry cost. But everybody's done that. So, But the real way for us to fix all of this is to flip it back to where producers make 70 cents, packers make 30 cents. And I was just meeting with Kevin Buse up in Amarillo. They built a new meat packing facility for Texas producers, $620 million. We'll process 30 head. But in 1970, we had over 700 meat processing plants around Texas, so it was commoditized. So how can we get back to having more meat packing around the state to help producers be able to process their own animals and go sell them direct to consumer, which goes back to that is the free market fix. That is, producers have the ability to go sell direct to consumers, and consumers are going to dictate what they're willing to buy. And all of a sudden, producers are going to go, you know what? I don't really have to deworm my animal. I can use apple cider vinegar, a non-conventional way to treat for worms, because that's what people want. And so it's all these things are connected. But at the end of the day, if we can't keep agriculture guys in business, then it's all for naught. And our food is at even greater risk.
Well, a lot of the meatpacking plants closed down because of federal regulations. And that destroyed our economy right there.
Yeah.
And then so we
And
ended up-
consolidation and
Right.
private equity,
but a lot of the plants went overseas.
Yeah.
And we started processing over there. So there has to be a way for us to get back to where I'm looking at 30,000 veterans on farmlands, and it's like I want to get back there, but
Yeah. Listen, we have more veterans in Texas than anywhere else. 1.5 million veterans.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran. You're a veteran. They are 50% more likely to start a business and be successful. Why? Because they're not solely reliant upon that as their income, because they have retirement, they have benefits coming from the military. So we've got 166,000 acres of Chinese-owned farmland in Texas. Let's go seize it and figure out a grant program and go grant it out to veterans.
I'll go.
And
Sign
put
me
these
up.
guys in business, because right now people can't afford to get into agriculture.
No.
We
Sid
can't-
talks about how we have this amazing program at TDA and we're getting young people. There are no young people going into agriculture.
Even an old person, I can't afford to buy. If my family wants to get together, my kids and grandkids and everything on a piece of property, 100 acres to be able to buy, to be able to start raising crops and animals, you can't afford to do it.
I talked with this kid McCray the other day. I was in Lubbock at the cotton meeting. And McCray said, my grandfather farmed 1,500 acres, made an incredible living, sent 4 kids to college, beautiful house, had a great retirement. He goes, I farm 10,000 acres and I'm single and I eat hand to mouth. And I mean, this kid's almost in tears. He's 32 years old. And I said, dude, I'm going to come out. We're going to meet. I'm going out to their Farm Bureau board meeting out there, and I'm going to meet with them all. Because those are the guys that we got to figure out how to help. But it's Monsanto and it's John Deere. And every time, I promise you, if we figured out how to get them from 15 cents to 20 cents, John Deere is going to come in and raise it, all their costs by 5 cents, and they're going to capture it. And that's what happens is as soon as a farmer gets a little bit ahead, all the input people come in and take it away from them. And, again, I'm not a government interventionist, but we might have to have some intervention in that.
Tell us about, there was a question, what are the first 2 changes you envision making? First, you said personnel, and that would be,
People, process, profit, and product.
okay, including chief of staff.
And
for
a lot of
Commissioner
them.
Miller. The second one was when lawmakers, and I don't know which lawmakers, told Miller to live within his means. He ignored them and raised hundreds of fees on farmers, ranchers, small businesses, to the point of $27.3 million, when the programs only cost 20.8. Gave him a $6.5 million surplus. And then you said he handed out over 400,000 in bonuses to his political allies. Can you allude to that a little bit more?
Yeah, the people that he brought in to TDA and bonused them out, paid them out. And part of our public information request of really trying to understand. There have been over 130 employees. I was told you a couple days ago, it's more like 190 employees um, be fired or quit from TDA since March of this year.
So clarify this for me. Private businesses have not been able to give out bonuses for 4 or 5 years. You're telling me state employees are getting bonuses as employees? What the heck?
Yeah.
We have a public information request on that.
Yeah, I submitted it yesterday on a whole bunch of stuff. There's, no, it's in the car, like 18 different things. Because when I say these things, he'll just immediately go, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not true. And yet, I have so many of the previous employees that reach out to me on a regular and daily basis. You know, they had TDA employees that were afraid to go to our debate last night, so they sent their family members, and they were there so they could hear him. But he just kind of says whatever he wants to say. But there's a lot of things that, and again, I don't have definitive proof, and so it's hearsay. But there's a lot of hearsay that's corroborated across a lot of people of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
We got maybe 5 minutes or so.
So kind of going along, everything's going along with one another. It's just amazing. But the producers getting charged more than the actual costs to run a service. Is there any idea of how much this is amounted to?
Well, I mean, the state report says that they just raised it excessively. And I think the state auditor came in and redid that. So I met with the Texas Food and Petroleum Association, which is the C stores and gas stations. And when Bucky's was putting in a Tesla charging station that is not part of the gas pumps, TDA essentially exerted their effort and their authority over that and added a $3,600 per charging station fee. So the Senate or the House, I'm not sure, called him to the Capitol with the Texas Food and Petroleum Association, and for him to give a justification for a $3,600 fee. And by the time he arrived there, it was $16, which is what the normal gas pump fee was. So it's as though they make decisions without a business mindset of really doing a pro forma and figuring out what the costs are associated with the program. They're just in a money grab. Why? Because he needs to pay for his TV show and his podcast and all of his wrappings around trailers and things like that. Again, I did not start out on this road as an anti-Sid guy.
Well, you're supporting him.
Yeah. But as I've gotten into this, it's just the level of mismanagement that seems to be corruption. It's ridiculous. And he treats it like I owned Nature Nate's. I could do whatever I wanted to because I was Nature Nate. It was mine. What he does is not his. And he is a steward. And he is stewarded poorly. And he's a hemp grower now, and the whole hemp regulation, he said it last night. I wrote the hemp laws. Well, he wrote them in such a way that created this crack in the door that he has been able to take advantage of, and that has brought the feud between the governor and the lieutenant governor and created these 6,000 CBD hemp stores that are really just selling pot.
Mm-hmm. They are.
And he's the one who did it. Why? Because that's what business he's in. He has grown 3 crops of hemp himself. And I could go in and tell you guys some other stories, but again, it's all hearsay. And since this is on video, I'm not going to go and accuse him of things I don't have proof of.
Yes. So your one of your answers here on financial assistance and farmers and things. It says government shouldn't pick winners and losers. It should be a level field so that honest, hardworking Texas farmers can compete, produce, and feed our people without being crushed by global forces beyond their control. When other countries, I mean, they dump things into the U.S. and into Texas to drive the price down. How do you? What's kind of your philosophy of how you're going to, you know, government money helping private industry, but yet we're dealing with imports and other factors. So just your philosophy of how to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, having been in agriculture where we buy 80% of the honey that we utilize in the United States internationally. We buy honey for ingredient companies that they use. We buy honey for retailers that we do their private label. We buy for food service, and then we have 120,000 beehives, and we'll bottle 20, 30 million pounds just for the brand Nature Nates. So we have a lot of experience, internationally acquiring commodities and bringing them in. But the playing fields in foreign countries are based on protectionist policies that countries have in place. I could buy honey in Mexico. I can never sell honey in Mexico. I could buy honey out of Europe. I can never sell honey in Europe. And so this, I know it's a challenge and it's a little messy what's going on with the tariffs, but it's the right decision. And to really kind of help try to level the playing field for agriculture. And so the 122,000 farms that we lost last year, they weren't the big farms. And honestly, they weren't even really the small farms, the guys that do it on the side. It's the guys that are small that are trying to scale to that next level, and they're all in. And those are the guys that they just don't have the volume and the scale and the cost savings to amortize a lot more acreage and things like that. So in 1998, the USDA had a small farm white paper that they put together about the future of small farm agriculture in America. And they said, if we continue down this path, we're going to lose all the farms, all the small farms. We're going to have agriculture consolidate. We're going to lose all meat packing, and we're going to have a few major meat packers that are going to control the market. But we don't have to go down that path that we're going down right now. We can do this. And with great intentionality, they decided, no, we're going down this path. And, as a believer, I think all things are spiritual warfare. But as I look at this, I mean, you can see it has to be demonic, because I don't think there's any single individual that has the type of influence and strategic operational ability to execute what has perpetrated into America. But there is, whether there's one person, Bill Gates, who owns more farmland than anybody else, who's trying to bring digital ID in. He owns 30% of John Deere. He's a major investor in, pharmaceutical companies, agriculture companies, and he is the perpetrator of the COVID virus on America through the WHO, which he funds 88% of their budget. And so, when I was talking to these guys in West Texas, this one guy's neighbor was going out of business. And you know who came to buy his land? Bill Gates. And so all the input costs keep going up, driving guys out of business. And then you have this one guy who has actual influence on the input costs coming in to buy the land. And ultimately, if you think we've got a blue coast and a blue coast and red in the middle. Well, the red in the middle is agriculture. It's the heart and blood of America. And if they can consolidate it into a group of very large, I don't want to call them, not all large farms are industrial corporate farms. They're family farms, but large, then, and we get rid of all the small people, you know what happens? The rural areas start to turn blue. So that's why I said it's got to be more spiritual than anything else, because the incipient nature of how all this stuff is connected, you see it, but there's no one who could really ever pull all this off, except the one who's there to lie, kill, and destroy, the roaring lion.
I think we have time for one more.
All right. So you
Make
had,
it good.
I'll try to make it short. You had said that you've received quite a bit in fundraising, a little bit more than Sid. And here I
A
see
lot more than Sid.
a lot more than Sid. And here I see the names or some listing, but there's no expectation relationship at this time. In other words, whenever if I give you $30,000 and I own, I don't know, a milk or dairy farm, I am going to want some favors. I mean, that's just the nature.
Listen, that's what politics is all about.
That's what so I'd like to understand your donations a little bit and how you feel like you'll be able to be independent.
One, I put more money into my campaign than anybody else
Okay.
by tenfold. So,
Okay. Well, these are major players in your campaign.
I mean, I've got some guys that put in, you know, I think the biggest contribution, $50,000.
Okay.
You know, and that guy is involved in adoption and ministry.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, I mean, it's from, let me think, from agriculture. How many? I've had one guy uh, give 5,000, one guy give 1,000,
Yeah, that's not super significant.
and that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it, honestly, the part that frustrates me on the fundraising, being in ministry all those years, I mean, I was in charge of raising money at E3, and I had amazing, all my closest friends are guys that I met when I was doing fundraising. They're millionaires, billionaires. And I thought, this is going to be a layup, you know, going out and raising money. These guys have handed me $1 million check before in ministry. Those same people are writing check for like 10,000. I'm like, whoa, you forgot some zeros, you know? So it's just different, you know? And the ag world has not jumped on board yet. Everybody's waiting to see the filing closures on Monday. And so, you know, whether it's Farm Bureau, Texas cattle feeders, cattle raisers, corn, wheat, cotton, they're all just waiting, but they're all very excited, very enthusiastic, and are already saying, you know, we can't do anything until closure, but we're really glad that you're here. And unfortunately, things start out as just, oh, you're not Sid. And my responsibility is to be then get them to the place where we're really glad you're Nathan.
Okay, well, this is a point in time. We can take up to 5 minutes for closing and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Could you address agroterrorism? It was a word I had never heard before
Yeah.
till I read your brochure.
Yeah, and who watches this? Just curious.
So there's several things. We put it out on a website and we'll release that once our membership approves a recommendation. Probably at our January 5th meeting, that's our target date. And then anybody that has access to that will be watching it. But we won't release anybody's until membership has approved.
Okay.
It'll be on YouTube.
And then it'll be, yeah, YouTube platform.
But it's open to the public. Yeah.
Then
Open to the public.
it's only closed.
Yeah.
us.
Okay. Okay.
Right now.
Yeah. So, well, again, I appreciate you guys allowing me to come in and meet with you today. And, you know, I have a friend of mine that I'm actually trying to get him to give me a bunch of money, you know, because we've got, it costs a lot of money to run this. But he was telling me that he goes, you know, I'm tired of politicians that get into politics just so they can go to the next level. And he's like, so make a commitment that you won't try to go to the next level. And I said, you know what? I said, yes, the way I look at it in life, I never meant to be in ministry. I went on a mission trip. I never meant to be in the honey business. I bought a beehive. I never had plans to do a VH Cube or I Am Second or Nature Nates. You know, one of my life verses is Ephesians 2:10, right after Ephesians 2:8-9, which is about salvation through grace and faith, not by works. And the very next verse says, but God created you for good works. Welcome to the kingdom. And so Ephesians 2:10, for God created us as his workmanship in Christ Jesus for good works that he established beforehand that we should walk in them. And in Jeremiah, it says that God called him out to be a prophet even before he is in his mother's womb. And so God has a plan for every single one of our lives that he wants to use us for. And I talk with my kids about, well, how do you discover that? Well, Romans 12:1 and 2, and you guys know this. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable as your reasonable act of worship. Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so you can know and test God's good, acceptable, and perfect will. So if God created us for good works, the way we discover those is through offering yourself up as a living sacrifice on a daily basis. And so I can't guarantee you that I wouldn't go to another office. That's not my responsibility. I don't know what the good works are that God's got for me. My job is to try to surrender on a daily basis, listen to the Lord, pursue the Lord. And you know what? I struggle less of the eyes, less of the flesh, and the pride of life. And, but also through accountability, transparency, and a very committed wife. The Lord helps keep me within the rails. So as I've gotten into this, I've just become so much more understanding, passionate, and I'm not. We were talking earlier about, God told me to run. God didn't tell me to run. I'm just out testing, trying to figure out, God, is this it? Is this what your good, acceptable, and perfect will is? And so, but as I do see what's happening, um, I almost feel as much opportunity to make an impact for God's kingdom doing this as I did when I felt like I was in full-time ministry. And the thing that is different, when I was in ministry, we were limited by the money we could raise. When I was in business, I was still limited by the money I could make. And the benefit of this isn't the money, it's the bully pulpit. I don't know everything. I don't need to know everything. What I do know is how to surround myself with people who do know the things I don't know. And there are a lot of people out there that would probably be a better ag commissioner than I would be. And those are the people I'm going to get on my team. I don't know how to farm wheat. Never farmed it. But a wheat farmer doesn't need me to tell him how to farm wheat. He needs me to help him figure out how to sell more wheat for more money to more people. And that's the problem with agriculture. So um, one of my very favorite, got a minute, I'll tell you, one of my very favorite passages in scripture is when Moses is up on Mount Sinai and the burning bush. That's the first time God tells Moses right before he leaves. Oh, and by the way, tell the Egyptians to give you all their gold necklaces and earrings. It's kind of a weird thing, right before he even sends them back, and then right before they leave, two more times. So it says that the Israelite women adorn their children with the gold and the clothing of the Egyptian women. You see all these little kids muling through the desert, and all that swag. So then God brings Moses back up onto Mount Sinai, and he's telling him, hey, I want you to build the tabernacle. I want you to do the ephod. I want you to do the lampstand and all these things. I mean, like Exodus 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. It's like this long list. I always have this image of Moses like drooping down his head, like, oh my gosh. And then he says, but don't worry, I've sent Bezalel and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach. I put all the creativity and craftsmanship in their heart to accomplish what I've called you to. So here were people that were in slavery for 400 years, and they had the gold of the Egyptian empire at their availability to take those Egyptian gods, melt them down. First, they made a calf, and then turn them into the ark. And then he created people and put skills and abilities and talents and knowledge and wisdom in their heart to come alongside and to create the very things that God had called Moses to do. And as I have looked back throughout my career, especially in ministry, um, people and money were never the issue when it's God's plan. God brings the sons of Bezalel and Aholiab and puts all the creativity and craftsmanship in their heart to accomplish what he wants to. So that's the way I'm going to approach leading. And in Deuteronomy 28, when George Washington swore in as the first president of the United States, he opened the Bible to Deuteronomy 28 and put his hand on that. because it's George Washington. He had no idea what he signed up for. It wasn't like a job description. Okay, he's president. He said, I'm a farmer. But Deuteronomy 28 says that if you will seek me and keep my commandments, that I will send the sun and the rain, and your animals will have lots of babies. Your crops will be abundant. Your storehouses will overflow. I will make you to be the head and not the tail. Your enemies will be at peace with you. And that all comes from seeking God. And so that's what we need to do inside of TDA, to fill it with an environment and a culture. You don't have to be a Christian to work there, but we're going to honor God and keep his commandments, because that's the only way that I can really believe that I can bring a benefit to agriculture in Texas that comes from the blessings of God.
All right, great. Thank you for that. We'll wrap it up here and appreciate you coming in again, fill out a questionnaire, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
God bless you, and God bless the great state of Texas.